Hello and welcome to Tokenverse podcast series, where we bring together the creators, blockchain specialists, investors, intellectuals, and experts to brainstorm and discuss the potential and future of Web3 technologies. This production is brought to you by DoinGud, an NFT marketplace which empowers creators and connects people across the world who want to do good. Today we're going to discuss the NFTs for museums and institutions, and we're very lucky to have very exciting guests tonight. We're going to start with introducing Frances Liddell, who is a PhD researcher at Manchester. Her PhD is involved working collaboratively with National Museum in Liverpool to explore how we might implement the NFTs in museum practices. Frances, would you like to tell us how is your PhD research going?
Yeah, it's going well, thanks. So the actual project itself is now completed. So I'm actually just like finishing writing up and hoping to be a doctor by the start of next year. But yeah, it's been an exciting project. Working with a museum through a time in the NFT space, which has just changed so rapidly as well. I started this year in 2018, which was just kind of the end of an initial hype about blockchain, and people were just starting to learn about NFTs. So it was amazing that this museum just let me just kind of take over and be like, well, let's tokenize some of this collection, let's see what we can do. And essentially I was doing it to explore this idea of shared guardianship. So can we use NFTs to forge new connections between a museum and like the audience it serves, and basically like make people feel more connected to an institution and to the collections itself, basically in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And 2018 is also the year when our other speaker, Violeta Valchev, you got into NFTs in 2018. So Violeta is a creative producer, filmmaker, and interdisciplinary artist. She's also community leader at DoinGud. And as an artist, Violeta does a variety of work, and it varies from dance to theater. She did AR installations, and she worked as a dancer and curator in both London and Berlin. Violeta, yes, can you tell us about let's not talk about DoinGud yet. Let's talk about your work as an artist. What are you working on now?
Yeah, by the description you gave, I wear a lot of hats, and that's somewhat true. At the moment, I'm on a film, on a video art installation, and I'm also actually working into how cinematography and filmmaking and video arts could go into NFTs. And I'm also the community leader within DoinGud, and I'm happy to work with empowering and also educating artists how they can explore their artworks and how they could find more potential in reach throughout different communities. And when you said 2018, I got into NFTs. So exhibition in Berlin, which is called Proof of Work in Schinkel Pavilion. I was working at the time as a curator actually in the gallery, and I was also creative director in a performance installation in Rheinberghalle in Berlin, which is a huge whole space where exhibitions as well as performances are hosted. And already there, people were actually talking about how AR and VR could be implemented within the live space, and how that could be also tokenized, even though NFTs were still kind of a niche within the art market.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And finally, welcome Mel Vera, who is an ecosystem builder at DoinGud, but also Mel has got her fingers in many other different pies. She's she started after Hurricane Maria. She was working with the foundation. So what was the foundation, Mel? The Foundation for Puerto Rico, and then she's executive vice president for the Blockchain Education Network. She's also founded non-profit organization in Colombia, and she's been speaker at many interesting events. Is there any other events, you have in the pipeline right now, Mel?
Not really. I'm taking it a little on the down end on events this year, just getting ready for next year. But really excited to be in NFT NYC with our team, and in ETH Lisbon, we will be there too. Yeah, very happy to be here. It's really cool to see the way in which we're moving in the space. You know, I've been in the space for about 5 years now, and NFTs have been around for a while, as Violeta has said. You know, and so really excited to be here with all of you to talk more about what this movement is doing for museums and the trends that are coming up for creators.
Yeah, maybe we should start with the creators before we jump on the subject of museums. Violeta, how has this pandemic situation actually changed the creative process for you?
Oh, yeah, it changed it very drastically. It actually started from last year when I was supposed to have a show in London at Platform Theatre, King's Cross, and it was actually a part of a larger performance and exhibition program, which was also in collaboration with UAL, University of Arts in London, and it was a huge event. But of course, it got cancelled because of COVID. So a lot of artists actually decided to organize a somewhat substitute to it in an online space, even though a lot of people had to adjust their work to the online world. And I think that kind of accelerated the process into artists dwelling into the digital space and how that could create for them, even though that they want to continue their work life, but that could be something which could, for me, work parallel. So I would work within creating online exhibitions or producing things online, even somewhere internationally, and while trying to do my work live. So yeah, it was challenging, but I think in every challenge there's an opportunity, and NFTs gives an opportunity itself.
Mm-hmm. And Francis, you decided on the subject of your PhD in 2019 already, and then the pandemic happened. What were your thoughts then? Like, oh, right, I chose the right subject?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, we had luckily 2019 to kind of plan it. But yeah, obviously things like we did workshops, and initially they were all going to be based in the museum, and of course that had to be moved to Zoom. But ultimately the concept is actually an online exhibition and NFTs. So yeah, it was that sense of my colleagues in the department are all stressing out because all the museums are closed and they literally can't do anything. And I'm like, well, I've got a smart contract, I can do something. Like, so yeah, there was a slight sense of kind of ease, but it wasn't easy as well because of course the National Museum of Liverpool I work with only has a small digital team. And of course they were inundated as soon as the museum closed because that was their only source of accessing to the public and engaging with people. And suddenly everyone wanted their attention. So unfortunately my project did kind of take a little bit of a backseat. But it's then funny how like this year suddenly with NFTs becoming sort of hitting another craze, how it's suddenly be like, oh, actually this project's quite useful. This is quite interesting. So yeah, it's come in waves. It's been a kind of really interesting experience, really. And I suppose that's just the thing of working in collaboration with a museum rather than just doing a PhD, you know, on your own in the library.
Fantastic. And Mel, for you as an ecosystem builder at DoinGud, could you sense that there is more interest for institutions such as museum when it comes to this technology and generally this type of creating and selling, collecting art?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there's still a bit of, you know, before I came on DoinGud, I also had my own boutique celebrity agency in New York City, and we were speaking with multiple museums and art specifically, and it was really interesting for me to see, for example, a museum like the Guggenheim be really open to some degree and working with MoCA, but many of their original artists, which I won't name, were very hesitant. Traditional artists, really. And so it's really interesting to see kind of like that dichotomy of the museum, really kind of opening up to new trends and new technology that can empower artists, and some traditional artists having a hesitation. But with DoinGud, it's been really cool because, you know, we have had a large influx of interest from museums, especially because in DoinGud, one of the features that we are is the ability for anyone to have their own gallery. So any brand, any museum can have their own gallery and choose and curate with other artists. And this is something that Violeta has actually, you know, as a community leader, has been working with different kinds of brands and galleries or museums on board when this feature comes out. But it's been very, very interesting. And it's also been very interesting to hear from artists in this space that honestly are close friends, their response of how museums have supported their NFTs or galleries like Christie's or houses like Christie's and Sotheby's. So it's really interesting to see how slowly we're getting there. And the most important piece is really education and having resources for decision makers and for artists to feel comfortable, because this is really about guiding one another. And you know, crypto for such a long time seemed a bit scammy and a bit sketch. And that's because there's these players that come in and see this as a money grab. And really, this is a place to build value and to change the world. And so it's about educating creators how that works. And that's not just a money grab. And precisely that's what we're doing at DoinGud. And so it's been really cool to see how those resources can truly make a huge difference in the space.
Francis, from your perspective, as Mel mentioned, that some people, in this case artists, are sometimes hesitant and suspicious towards technology. In your eyes and the world of museums, who are the parties which would be most kind of skeptical towards this technology, towards this solution?
Well, as Mel said it something reminded me of kind of an email thread I was part of a couple of months ago when kind of NFTs kind of hit, and then everyone was suddenly talking about it, particularly in the UK. And someone posted an email being like, NFTs, yay or nay? And those, you know, everyone, there was just like classic polar eyes of like people being like, this is great, this is, and I suddenly found myself having to kind of defend the technology in some way, which of course I try not to the whole time because I'm also critical of it as a researcher. But I think it just goes to highlight that, yeah, there are more museums kind of looking at this space, but also there's a lot of people who are really skeptical of it. And particularly, well, just from my perspective in the UK, a lot of museums who are nationally based, so are funded through the government, are very risk averse. And I was just incredibly lucky that I chose a museum that is not as risk averse as everyone else. But saying that, I do know there are some institutions in the UK now that are looking at it and are kind of exploring and experimenting with it. And again, to echo Mel's point, it's really about this education thing. And, you know, for my research, it was an experiment, but it was also to show people that this is what blockchain is. This is how you can use it. It's not scary. It doesn't have to be about money. It can also be about community value and personal value and all these other kind of, and essentially cultural, social value as well. And yeah, it's just moving that space away from the speculative markets a little bit. But I think this sort of thing will take time, and it's really nice to see this year more and more museums thinking about this, particularly as, you know, they've been hit so hard by the pandemic and things like this. There are lots of really interesting opportunities in terms of fundraising and development that, you know, the NFTs could definitely address some of those issues. They can't wholly address them, but they could certainly address aspects to it. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think, yeah, maybe in the next 5 years, I reckon we'll see many more institutions suddenly appearing on the scene.
Violeta, can you think of any case studies which are encouraging in the movement?
Yeah, definitely. So got to promote the Whitworth, which is based in it's part of the University of Manchester. Really lovely gallery, and they have been experimenting with their own NFTs. Basically, they made a development of a William Blake work, So it's like they used MSI software to kind of reproduce a whole new work out of the original piece, and they've sold them as NFTs on the Tezos blockchain using Link. And basically all the proceeds will go towards a community funding pot, which is exactly what museums should be doing. It shouldn't be about let's just make loads of money. Let's think about, well, how can we use this money and funding to develop our own projects and support the communities that we serve. So I think they're a really great example of how museums could potentially use NFTs. Of course, it's still quite slow growing. I think they've only sold about 5 of their NFTs out of 50. But also at the same time, that kind of also just really highlights the issue of audience we have and customers, because are we trying to go for the museum audience or are we trying to hit the crypto audience?
Right.
And I think that's a really interesting question for a lot of museums to start grappling with.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, it's in the case of this project, the percentage of the income from sales go towards some special causes. Maybe Mel, you can come in here and tell us how the whole inspiration of doing good came about. It seems like there's a trend here when it comes to NFT space, right?
It's really important to this is all creator and giving economy, right? And as we're moving into Web3 and we're building Web3, those are doings that are really prevalent. And so in doing good, the way in which we actually mint NFTs and in which our creators go and launch their own NFTs is specifically around actually doing good, not the brand, but like doing good in the world, you know? And we believe that in any business model, you need to have a conscious mindset and have a mission involved. And so with all of the creators that launch on Doing Good, you get to choose a social impact organization to empower, one that connects and relates to you. And you can, the minimum that any NFT is given to an impact organization is 5%, and you can actually see what their funding goal is and what their key metrics of impact are. But in addition, you can also say, hey, you know what? I don't want to give this one 5%. I want to give this one 10%, 15%, 20%, you know, as much as you want, really. And the whole goal here is, like I said, really, we talk about building Web3 to change the world. Everyone who's in blockchain and Web3 says this, you know, and NFTs have been around for a while. Some amazing projects like POAP have honestly, they just created their millionth POAP the other day. It's amazing. Patricio, the founder, and the team has done an amazing job. But that's one project, you know, and so we're here to really tell everyone, hey, let's put our money where our mouth is about Web3 and impact. And if we're really here to make an impact and empower others and educate, then, you know, let's launch NFTs that reflect that and that we can empower one another. So yeah.
And Violeta, from your perspective as an artist, could you say that there is a really appetite from the artist community for donating towards this type of causes?
I think yes, in the sense that there's a tendency, you know, especially in the last 2 years, with so many things happen from political and ecological perspective, and a lot of artists who are aspiring artists, as well as the ones who are as well established ones, try to have their artworks within a mission, or they have some kind of a narrative they want to support, whether it's about the protest or ecological disasters, and they want to bring awareness to it. Usually artists tend to choose a mission that they want to follow. So I feel it's only natural for them to also want to have at least some kind of percentage of their sales to go through organization, because it kind of everything comes together. If you have an artist who is also an activist, it doesn't have to be an activist within the conventional sense. Making an art which gives voice to someone who organizes, for example, it's a form of activism itself. And that paired with empowering yourself as an artist, empowering others, and supporting social impact organizations is somewhat the perfect recipe, I think. And of course, education is needed. Not a lot of artists think in that global way. I think artists tend to see more of the creative side of their work, but it's also nice. It's also needed almost to know how to navigate within space and to take informed decisions with your artwork.
Mm-hmm. And also the NFT technology brings new opportunities and changes the role of donators or patrons a bit. So perhaps, Francis, could you give us an overview? How is it different and what opportunities perhaps are here when it comes to the other side of art business, when it comes to collectors and donators?
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of opportunities to use NFTs within kind of donations and fundraising, particularly if you think about the NFT being more than simply just a piece of artwork. And I think in that case, it's about thinking about use values of the NFT. And, you know, we talk about, you know, patronage and like philanthropy in museums. And of course, there's quite a lot of questions around first of all, where does that money come from? And can then crypto actually change that and make it more transparent? But secondly, then how can we use that to remunerate people for, you know, investing into the institution? That isn't just simply just putting their name on the wing. It, you know, the NFT could have some form of value, like, I don't know, help in terms of like decision making in museums or things like this. And I've been thinking a lot about this in my thesis, because the NFTs that I made, it's like, well, are they just a remuneration for their work? Like, what else can they do with them? Is remuneration simply enough? Like, does it have to have something more? And I think definitely when it comes to patronage and that whole kind of structure that museums have, like, it'd be interesting to see whether it simplifies the process at all. But yeah, I'm not like I think the use value thing is kind of a key thing there, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mel, I suppose that as DoinGud has a feature for museums and art galleries. From your perspective, yes, when it comes to NFT communities creating the museums, how would that work?
Yeah, I mean, so just before I go into DoinGud, just to highlight briefly, like what's going on in the States and people creating their own galleries and museums, you know, it's really cool to see. Actually, I'm not sure if you know, but some people are even, you know, some collectors, there are big NFT collectors. There are whales that have, you know, upwards of $500,000 in NFTs in their collection, and are looking at ways to also how do I look at this with taxes, right? How does tax come into this? And so one of the things that people are doing is they're creating museums and storing their art there. I can't say that I'm an accountant, and this is not financial advice, but this is something that I'm observing, and it's really interesting. And from DoinGud, completely separate, but our gallery feature is coming out soon. And basically, if someone's interested in having their own gallery, they can. And you know, I can't go into details because these details will be coming out soon by the team in a blog post. But I can mention that it will allow one to gallery for brands, for museums, and really they are going to have the freedom to manage that gallery as they wish and curate with the community as they wish. So, you know, I think this is going to be really cool because personally, as I see the crypto community creating museums already and galleries on crypto voxels to display their artwork, for DoinGud to come out with this feature is something really exciting because I can't wait to see how the community is going to respond. I can't wait to see the community feel empowered with this and really take it to a whole new level. And, you know, it's also going to create a space of meta DAOs, right? Because I think when we talk about museums and governance NFTs, I think the really fun part in this space is when we combine NFTs and DAOs, NFTs, DAOs, and DeFi. Wow, you know, what a magical world that's going to be. And it's really cool I'm doing to be creating that here, especially because, you know what, the space is growing. And like I said, I joined this space because I really wanted to make sure that we were building with values that were going to reflect Web 2, and we're going to be inclusive. And this is why, you know, it's, for me, I'm so grateful to be a part of a team like DoinGud, because I know that we're building these features with the creators' freedom and inclusivity in mind. And so it's really awesome to see how the industry is going to react to this all.
So it's good that you mentioned the creation of these new institutions online, new museums, but the open to all of you, do you think that these ones actually going to replace the old school museums and the institutions?
It's interesting. No, because I think, you know, what's really strong about museums is that they're very strong curators, right? So it's cool because I often feel like I'm a curator in this space, and I'm like, oh man, this is what it feels like to be like a museum curator, you know? So I think it's going to be really cool because it's empowering individuals, but I don't necessarily think it's going to replace museums. It might replace them if they don't take advantage of the technology. And actually, it's been really cool to speak to some galleries and to some museums who are like, you know what, like, I'm really interested in this, and not because of like the royalties and all of this. They actually want to access a new type of collector, right? Traditional collectors are really cool, nothing against them, but now there's a larger market and there are other players coming in, and that means more support for artists. So I don't think that they're going to replace. I think that it's going to create a whole new type of curator opportunity for individuals.
Violeta, I saw you shaking your head when I asked the question. What is your opinion?
Yeah, when I think I'm with Mayo on one, the way I see it, I think they're gonna kind of work parallel to each other, and then maybe gonna absolutely will need to get on board, and some of them are even most like traditional ones. I think a couple of weeks ago I read about Uffizi Gallery was tokenizing a Michelangelo's piece. So that's coming from a very traditional museum with, you know, with values which are long gone. It's quite the jump, I think, when it comes to technology. And yeah, I think it's gonna be something that is gonna work together. Like, there are galleries who are working, like in Berlin, Königsgalerie, which is a very famous one, opened an online gallery in the Centrum, so they want to keep up with that. And yeah, and I don't see how that's going to replace the other, because I know that people need live experiences as well, which could also be NFTs actually. So I think that's the other thing, that museums might go into maybe tokenized tickets or even merchandise within museums. So there's so many possibilities to explore this space.
Francis, you had to deal with like traditional museums in your work. What do you have to say on that subject?
Yeah, I would agree with both of them. Like, they are two different things, and it reminds me in a way, if you think about crypto art. Crypto art did not replace digital art. It's not part of that canon. They run parallel to each other, and I think it'll be the same with, you know, the traditional institution and these new museums that are popping up. It also makes me think about this ongoing challenge I have in myself when I'm thinking about like working with museums, is this thing of the NFT space was developed to move away from the traditional gallery system. And there is a slight question of, well, should we then be infiltrating that space? you know, should Christie's be in Decentraland? I don't know. There is something inside of me that's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right. I feel like treading on someone else's space and someone else's toes. So I like the idea that there are actually museums being developed in this space, because it's sort of like, it helps to grow and hope. I mean, obviously I don't want to stop traditional museums from exploring NFTs, but there is a slight sort of like, I don't know, they're two separate things, aren't they?
And are there actually like any proper kind of like threats or, you know, some things that the traditional museums should look out for?
What is in like the NFT space?
Yeah.
When
they're embracing, when they're looking into embracing that technology.
Yeah, I think it's just about, so Violeta mentioned the Uffizi example, and this is another real dilemma for me with this example, because they literally replicated the work and turned it into an NFT, and for me that's very questionable. And I think one of the things that museums should look out for is this question of originality. And the reason why I like the Whitworth example so much is because it's not the direct example of the work. They've made a reiteration of it using the experts around them and making some really interesting pieces from it. And it's the same with my work as well. Like, we changed it by adding personal metadata, so people's personal experiences about objects into the NFT. And each time it's passing that threshold of originality, and it's allowing us to kind of think about this. Because if you think about copyright, for example, whichever country you live in, there is a threshold of originality that you have to pass in order to then claim rights over it. And I think there's the same sort of situation with NFTs. And I think it's another reason why people don't like NFTs in museums very much, is that if you're going to kind of directly replicate a work and then sell it, you know, people won't understand it. They already don't get the idea of buying a JPEG, let alone something that's literally a replica. So I think that is the main thing that museums shouldn't fall down, you know, when they're thinking about working with NFTs and this space, is produce something new, produce something exciting, you know, be inspired by your collection, work with artists to produce new things. And that's where you can grow in this space, not simply, otherwise you're just kind of going into that speculative market and selling things for the sake of it. And you know, it kind of brings up a lot of conversations that we've had in the past in this sector about licensing works in themselves. So when you digitize work and then license them, it's like, well, you know, it should be free, really. The internet's free. So it's the same question, I think. So yeah, that would be my biggest thing that museums need to look out for.
So yeah, Mel, did you want to add on to that?
Thank you, Anya. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, to that point, that's like just coming full circle to education again. That's why education is so important, you know, and that's one of the really cool things why, you know, I'm again so happy to be a part of DoinGud, because you know, one of the things that we have as one of our pillars is education, and Violeta actually is our community leader. You know, one of the goals with the program, one of the things that we're doing is hosting local meetups in galleries, in museums, in collectives, in co-working space. And this is not education about DoinGud. This is education about NFTs. Why do we create? You know, what is decentralization? How to make a MetaMask account? How to keep your NFT safe? You know, all the things that creators have questions on that they're not sure about, right? And all the things that galleries, right now, some galleries are feeling a bit left out because their creators are making NFTs and they're like, well, thanks, you know, I was here with you like all these years and now, I mean, go have fun. But the cool part is to show them that there's a space for them as well, you know, and to bring this education to them so that they're not fearful or bitter, but instead excited. And so it's really cool to have, for us, it's really cool to have creators like Violeta to be able to, you know, really resonate and speak as a creator, you know, and so I just wanted to touch upon education because it's so important, and there's so many different methods that people are being educated these days. Twitter Spaces, you know, with so many different leaders, news, and all of these things. So just important.
Sure. We have quite a few artists here on the podcast, and what they're actually saying is not only the lack of education and the fear of this technology, but some artists feel like their art is actually not, eligible for the NFT technology in terms of they don't think that their art is interesting to the NFT market, or they don't know how to convert the art that they're doing into NFT format. And right in time, we've got a question from the audience. We've got Ben Hensley asking, what would prohibit the physical piece being displayed in a museum, but ownership be represented by a token? Does someone want to pick it up?
Well, nothing really,
Yeah.
I would say. But because I think also we need to remember that an artwork has kind of two levels of ownership. We have the physical ownership and we have the digital rights ownership. And actually NFTs have created a third layer to that because you've now got NFT ownership. And I just, speaking from a museum stance, so for example, I know the NML holds a lot of works that they have in the physical space, but they don't own the digital rights management tool. So for example, I know they have a David Hockney, that if they ever wanted to digitize it or do anything with that digital version, they would literally have to request every request would have to go through the estate because they don't have the digital ownership. And it'd be basically the same thing with, well, NFTs also then don't really own, like, we're coming into the question of law here now as well, with like, what do you own with an NFT? And ultimately, like, what does the NFT stand for? What's smart contracts? What was the agreement? What's the artist agreement? So these are the things that would potentially prohibit the physical piece being displayed in a museum. But ultimately, at the moment, nothing would stop it because the NFT, it's quite an ambiguous thing, really, the NFT in itself.
Yeah, because NFT doesn't have to be animated JPEG, right? As most people, actually, some people feel that. Violeta, you as an artist, maybe you can give us an idea how NFTs actually can vary and what formats, what mediums they can take.
Yeah, I think what Francis said is very much to the point. Obviously, the first thing that we thought NFTs is a digital artwork where is a, it's from you can have like a digital piece or a drawing or even a video art piece, but you can also tokenize a real life piece. It's not that it doesn't have to be limited onto the digital space. Of course, when it comes to ownerships and law and copyrights, I think it also largely depends on it. I know that some countries have more lax requirements when it comes to copyrights and tokenize the work both digitally and live. But yeah, I don't know, Mel, do you have something to add on that? I'm not too much into the NFT.
Yeah, of course. It's super cool because it's true. Like, everyone thinks NFTs have to be digital, and they really do not. I actually was a dancer for 15 years, a ballerina, and so I'm also a creative to some degree. And we actually have a community leader, Eugenie from Paris, who is a prima ballerina in the French opera. Shout out to her, she's amazing. But one of the first things that we got really excited about when we started talking is also like NFTs and choreography. Like you see all of these choreographies on TikTok, these people doing these dances. And that choreography could be an NFT, We're also creating NFTs for public goods. We're looking at ways that we can tokenize our natural resources and really measure them. I mean, like, the possibilities of what can be an NFT are endless. There's so many unique pieces in this world, right? So what's really important, actually, in 2019, I did a ecological audit and supply chain traceability consulting for the 4th largest coffee company in Colombia. And that was really interesting. And I bring this up because one of the important pieces when we think about physical goods and NFTs is the ability to add the supply chain traceability layer. with the NFT now makes it where, you know, let's say an artist like Kanye launches his Yeezys again, right? One of the biggest things there were so many counterfeits and not anyone knowing this is a real one or not, whatever. You know, if he were to want, he could create that collection again as an NFT collection, you know, and you could actually put a tracker to it, and you can actually know, oh, this is, or a chip, you can know, okay, this is the real Yeezy, you know. And it's really cool when we're able to see all the different use cases, all the different ways that we can apply this to. And museums are not just doing, you know, fine art. There's so many different types of pieces that museums will exhibit, and so it's coming. You know what I mean? Like, it's honestly where we are now. I thought we would be 2 years further away. It's amazing how fast we're moving. I think truly COVID, to some degree, has had a large influence on this. And it's coming. There's more to come. The technology is being built. Please, world, be a little patient, but continue your excitement and interest, because there's so much that we are just getting started.
As you said, the possibilities when it comes to NFT technology are endless, but I think sometimes this particular fact can make people actually quite overwhelmed and discourage them from getting into NFTs, because if you're an artist or a gallery or museum specializing in something, and suddenly you've got this endless opportunities, you sometimes might not know where to start, right? So I was wondering whether, because of that, we're going to always have this part of the art world which is not going to be skeptical towards this technology, or you really do expect the, you know, mass adoption in that sector?
Well, I think you need to have strategy with whatever you do, right? And you need to understand the market. So what I often recommend people, even my high schoolers, I teach high schools in Harlem about NFTs and decentralization, and I love it. And what I tell them, they all launched their NFTs and they all sold. So if 15-year-olds in Harlem can do this, truly anyone can do this. What I recommend is going online and looking at NFTs that you like. You like the visual of it. Now choose 5 that are top selling. Which ones are the most performing in those 10 that you like, and understand their strategy. Right now, the strategy is collectibles and rarities, right? That's the trend that we're seeing in the current uptrend market. That's coming to a little bit of a rest. But, you know, as we move forward, it's really important to be able to storytell and build community. That has been the overall strategy in this space, and I'd say in products overall as well, that, you know, show time and time again to be resilient. And so knowing where your market is, Francis made a really great point here about the traditional crypto investors, crypto collectors, and the art collectors. And which is your market right now? Because majority of platforms, you need crypto and not fiat USD, for example, or euros. I'd say your market is crypto collectors, right? And so understanding where they are, Twitter, okay, engaging with them on Twitter, going to the spaces, right? Showing your face, showing that you're a true artist, because this really does make a difference. Now, when we are moving into a world where we're accepting fiat and euro and USD, that makes it a lot bigger. Now your fans are able to participate, right? Now there's a whole other market that you're able to engage, and that's a whole different strategy. But, you know, I completely understand that this can be intimidating. This space is intimidating whenever you come in, but just understand that we're all here to support one another. And if you have any questions, if you're looking to launch one, I have people all the time that message me on Twitter, and I sit with them. I had someone in Greece, and his daughter, 12 years old, his niece, 12 years old, wanted to launch a collection. And I sat with them at like 7 a.m. to this is what we love to do, you know? So I know I can speak for myself, Violeta, and I'm sure Francis, you know, we're all here. If you guys have any questions, please reach out, and we're here to support you in your strategy and your NFT journey, because there's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah.
Francis, you have probably more contact with the you know, like proper fine art artists and museum. Do you think they will actually at some point turn towards the NFT technology like Mel is hoping, or do you think some people will just be skeptical forever?
I don't know. I mean, as Mel was talking, it reminded me of me attempting to get my participants to register for a MetaMask wallet, which you guys all know is super quick and easy. And particularly is like I sent the link, made sure that they know it's not like it's like the legitimate one and everything. I was like, all you have to do is like click this button, you know, write down the C phrases. It took us 3 months to get like 8 participants to get my wallet done. And I have colleagues who've done, you know, have done similar projects previously. And again, like getting people to understand how to download a wallet and feel safe doing it. I think that's really the key thing, because it's really quick and there's so many YouTube videos if you get stuck. But feeling like they can click and not feel like a hacker's something going to take over the computer is going to be, that's the biggest hurdle. And then once you get into it, then it's like, okay, well, this makes more sense. And you're willing to experiment, particularly if you put like, you know, £20 into your wallet, like just buy. I mean, obviously now with Ethereum, you can't really do that now. You need far more than that. But back in the day, you know, you could just kind of play around with it. And that's how I learned and felt more confident. I mean, I still get scared every time I send a transaction, to be fair, because I generally, oh God. But I think it's that kind of getting people into that pattern, and it'd be the same case with museums and galleries. It's getting them to download a wallet, feel like they can look after it and maintain it. Particularly when it comes to like, okay, well, do we need hard wallets? Do we need software wallets? What does all this mean? Can we have multi-sig? Because of course, not only one person in an institution can own the wallet, because that goes against protocol. And of course, within that as well, museums will need to start writing policies and strategies to establish kind of some form of rules. For example, we have a thing called Spectrum, which is basically really set of like really easy instructions about how your session works into a museum collection. And we've basically only recently produced one for digital objects. So this is where we're at right now in this sector. We're very far behind. But I think now that we have that kind of digital spectrum version, you know, it's only a matter of time before we can start doing them for NFTs and basically give people that space to be like, well, these are the set of questions you need to think about before you even start embarking on it. This is then what you do next. This is how you download a wallet. These are the options of the wallets. This is how you look after them. This is what a seed phrase is. And I think that's really the crux of it. And it goes back to the education thing. It's, you know, making sure people have those resources. And most importantly, when it comes to museums, making sure that people have those resources that are easy to access and really simple to understand, because most museums have a very small digital team, if any. And it's normally just one person who's also doing the social media because they tend to be under 30. So it's that thing of like, they need to like be able to do this within a few hours and not spend hours and hours looking at it. So I think that's really the future if this is going to work for, you know, the traditional institution.
You know, that's something I have to say. I feel like I'm like pushing DoinGud so much on this call, but I promise it's because I love it, because I really believe in it. That's one of the things I have to say. I'm really proud of our team that we've recognized that, and it's about making any NFTs accessible to all, you know, like, of course, we believe in crypto and we believe in the importance of having crypto and the traceability of it all. But we also believe in the importance of making things easy for our community. And so one of the things that we're doing a large push is accepting fiat payments and allowing creators to be paid in fiat, which is going to allow for a lot of brands to come in, for a lot of nonprofit organizations who perhaps aren't on board to not have to worry so much about having these crypto wallets and buying crypto so much. The only thing though then comes, where do you keep your NFT? because at the end of the day, you keep your NFT in a wallet. So, you know, with that, in DoinGud, we're allowing, you know, creating with an email address, we can just create a wallet for you, and you'll have your NFTs there. And so, you know, this is really exciting for the community. This way we can open more and more doors for others who have a little bit of fear and perhaps start this way. And then one day they say, you know what, I'm saying that, you know, this isn't so scary. I'm gonna wallet, and I'm gonna invest, and perhaps I buy some Ethereum, perhaps I buy some Polygon, maybe some others, and I start buying NFTs with those. You know, I think that, to your point, Francis, we have to slowly start making our technology a bit more easy and user-friendly for traditional investors and traditional creators to then slowly kind of dip their toe into something that's relative to this technology and walk into the pool more and more.
Yes, as you're all saying, it's all about education, user experience, and I think you all three of you are doing a great job in that field. And of course, Mel and Violeta are doing a lot as a member of the, you know, NFT community on the ground, and Francis being the higher education. So because we're running out of time, I was wondering if any of you would like to ask questions to each other.
I wasn't ready for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about Francis' PhD, and in general, did you work with one specific museum, or did you investigate it like different places, different creators? How was the process for you?
So my PhD is actually a collaborative PhD. So it's all about working with one institution throughout the 3 years. And of course, that was like really practice-based as well. And it's quite unique. People don't really do collaborative PhDs. You sometimes go out and do field work, but like the National Museum of Liverpool, the NML as I call it, has literally been there from the start and have been part of the decision-making of every part. Although I have to admit, sometimes I'm just kind of like, well, this is it. Because also I'm working with 2 people who have full-time jobs and don't have time, unlike myself, to like research all this stuff. Which of course has been really fun, because it helps me understand a bit more about the processes for museums and what their natural thoughts are. And of course has kind of really helped the project evolve and make sure it's actually socially valuable for them as well. You know, we talk so much in research about, you know, it's quite easy to get stuck behind the computer essentially and write about theory, but it's really nice to try and see that implemented in a museum and actually see how it works with real people who go to the museum the whole time and are part of that community. And yeah, it was funny kind of the responses I got from people when I gave them the NFT, because it was part of a group of people who had, it was sort of over 6 months that we worked with them, so they were very much invested into the project. And a lot of people were like, I'm still scared of it, I don't know what this is, you know. And it was just kind of, yeah, it was almost comical in some respects looking back on it, this kind of like strange response. I think people were all just quite confused about what I'd done. I think now, you know, a year later, it's quite nice, or like over a year later now, it's kind of, I think they're now starting to get to grips with it. They're like, oh, this is what an NFT is, you know. So I always think like, I wonder if I'd done my research, if I'd started it this year, how different the results would be. Because ultimately my results are very mixed and people are quite confused. You were not like, you know, there were some people that loved them, some people just were like, I don't know what this is, and it will probably just sit in their wallet and they'll never look at it again. But I wonder if I did this now, how different would it be? Would I get more polarized responses? Would people be more interested in it? You know, it's just something I'll never know, but I just think it's a really interesting kind of process of that. Yeah.
Sounds like a really exciting journey.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's been really cool.
Absolutely. Well, anything else? Any more questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment on it. It's very interesting in general how we spoke about some artists and investors and creators who are skeptical, some are more into the technology, and it reminds me of an article that I read a couple of months ago about the emails and when the emails were created. And actually, a lot of people back then were skeptical about them. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to put them at the same, obviously, but there were a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, what is this email? That doesn't like." There was no use of it, and then just exploded, and literally everyone was using it. And that's in general with internet as well. And so I think that NFTs, it's a lot about community and collaboration, and it's amazing that you did PhD collaboratively, and DoinGud as well. We are very much a kind community. If you're not understanding something, it's very natural to ask, even if you feel like the question might be obvious, but there is always a place where you can get informed about things, I think.
Yeah, I have one question. It's about the Renaissance period, and that, you know, it almost feels like we're reliving, right? Where back in the day, there was a, I'm going to pronounce the name incorrectly, Mirachi, a family that was a large support. Thank you. Yes, was a large supporter of the artist during the Renaissance period and funded a lot of them. I'm curious, Francis or Violeta, you as well, if you have any opinions on this, how you're seeing that in currently NFT trends. If you're seeing any, you know, similarity and specific from a museum standpoint. It's really interesting for me.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I hadn't really thought. I mean, I've heard people briefly talk about kind of comparing it to the Renaissance, but of course, yeah, there's some real similarities happening. In terms of museums, like, it does make me think, because there is only, I mean, I only know one museum so far that's actually collected an NFT, like a traditional one, technically, or like has promoted themselves of doing so. There's, of course, there's probably lots of institutions that are talking about this. And of course, lots of museums have like made their own. But I think it'd be interesting to see whether there'll be like whales, you know, of traditional institutions.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that so many museums can't afford it. Like the NFT market at the moment is just, I mean, it's just way beyond what people can afford right now. But yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Have you got any ideas?
Yeah, I guess it's something that we'll observe, right? It's still happening. But if you if you get some insights, let me know, Francis.
Yeah. I think we get back to you.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see in years to come how will this period will be described, you know, in 100 years' time by people who will be learning about it. Whether it will be actually, you know, compared to Renaissance. But for now, thank you so much for this inspiring discussion. It's been a pleasure talking with all three of you. To our audience, I would like to encourage them to follow DoinGud on Twitter, and that way they can also reach out to our guest. Also follow, of course, DoinGud on Discord. Please join us next week where we're going to discuss the NFTs guide for collectors. And same time, same day next week. But for now, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Violeta. Thank you, Mel. You were amazing. And I wish you a very good weekend. Thank you so much. And see you soon.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Thank you for
Bye.
having us.